So they've told you that taxes were theft, were a form of theft. And they told you that freedom was about keeping everything you earn. But what they didn't tell you is that without taxes, there's no civilization. There's only castles and warlords and chaos. Our freedom isn't built on slogans. It's built on roads and hospitals, bridges, ships, and the demographic of workers who built them and who continue maintaining them. So, this is the real story of taxes, wealth, and the invisible war over who owns the future. So, let's talk about taxes. Taxes pay for the essentials that no private company will build for everyone. So think of things like roads and water systems, public schools, defense and national security, and organizations like FEMA, right? Things for like emergency disaster relief. Without taxation, the infrastructure that powers modern life collapses. So to put an analogy, you can't drive a Ferrari to work if, the bridge collapses. Fair taxation is not theft. It's membership dues for living in a functioning society, if you will. Now, if you talk about taxes, you have to talk about money. So let's talk about money. Money is like paper blood, and it must circulate to nourish the whole body. When the rich hoard money in things like trust funds and real estate and these financial instruments, the blood, if you will, the money, stops circulating. What's the result? Governments have two choices. Number one, print more money. That obviously causes inflation. Or number two, you borrow. But if you borrow, you have to pass the debt on to the next generation. And your savings devalue, right? Every dollar you have saved up in the bank, the following year there's inflation, it's not worth the same anymore. But the rich, their assets, the properties and the rents and the mortgages, they inflate in value. So when blood stops flowing, you don't get freedom, you get gangrene, you get rot. Wealth doesn't disappear. It moves upwards unless there's systems to check it. So I want to talk about the ultra rich, billionaires. Billionaires have more money than they could spend. Can you imagine having that problem? Having a problem where you make so much money that you can't spend it fast enough. So, what do you think happens? You think they invested in workers? Because they don't invest it back into workers per se, they park it. So, they invested in things like real estate and commercial property, private equity, commodities, and yachts. And as they acquire hard assets, the cost for normal people rise. So the cost of housing and rent and healthcare and education. So they don't just own wealth, they own survival itself. Asset inflation makes the rich richer and the middle class poorer every single year. So this is directly tied into corporate lobbying. So think of things like healthcare. In America, healthcare is directly tied to employment, and that's by design. You have corporate lobbyists that fight against universal healthcare to keep workers dependent. Without healthcare and or healthcare security, if you will, millions are trapped in low-wage, soul-crushing jobs. And then leaving a toxic job often means losing your doctor, your medication, or your child's healthcare, which is even worse. So you're not free if you can't afford to walk away. Without universal health care, economic mobility is a lie. Workers are forced to stay compliant and corporations profit. So when we don't have fair taxation or fair systems, what happens? The infrastructure crumbles, the middle class or the middle classes shrink, if you will. You get potentially civil unrest, or it's definitely going to rise. And democracies, again, they just rot and bloat and turn to plutocracies that, are ruled by the wealthy few. And there's been so many historical examples of this. Ancient Rome collapsed under wealth inequality and infrastructure decay, if you will. And revolutionary France burned what the elites refused to pay their share. That was the whole point of the French Revolution. So you can either share the load or carry the weight of the fall. You can have billionaires. This is not a rant against billionaires. And you could also have democracy. But you can't have both if the rich refuse to pay their dues. Taxes aren't punishment. They're the lifeblood of everything worth defending. So the next time they tell you taxes are evil, ask them, who paid for the road you drove it on or you're driving on? Who paid for the clean water in your sink? Who guards the night while you sleep? Civilization has a price, and the question always is, who pays it? So there are questions, or I guess arguments people always say, and I'm going to give you the response of what I think on these. So number one, like always, and I started with this, was taxes are theft. And my response to that is, again, civilization isn't free. The roads, the bridges, schools, and armies, they don't build themselves. Taxes are, again, the membership fee for society. But of course, you get a counter argument where they say things like, for example, the rich earned it. Why punish success? Well, no one builds an empire alone. They use workers, and they use workers that were educated in public schools, drove on public roads, and traded under protection of public law. So paying taxes isn't punishment. It's paying rent for using civilization. Now, again, you also hear things like lower taxes create jobs. I love this one. Lower taxes didn't rebuild the bridges, didn't lower your rent, and didn't save your town from floods. Jobs follow infrastructure, not slogans. Of course, there's the one circulating now that money will trickle down if we leave it alone. And money doesn't trickle, it pools. It floods in assets and drives up your rent, your groceries, and your healthcare, while billionaires buy their, fifth or sixth yacht. You also hear things like, for example, the economy grows when we cut regulations and taxes. So, yeah, to a degree, but that's for the top 1%. Meanwhile, your wages stagnate, your health cost triples, and your kids drown in student debt. And of course, there's always this one going around. I heard the other day on a podcast where someone said, well, healthcare is a personal responsibility. So let me respond to that in my way. How free are you when you can't leave your shitty job because you'll lose your insulin? So if healthcare is chained to your boss, you're not a citizen. You're an indentured servant. You're a hostage. And I've also heard, printing more money is no big deal. Well, again, every new dollar devalues the one you already earned. So inflation is a hidden tax that punishes the savers and rewards the hoarders. And of course, you hear things like, well, Amazon and people like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, right? They create jobs or job creators. Listen, workers create value and consumers create demand. And without roads, without education, safety, and law, billionaires would just be kings of mad huts. And again, you hear all sorts of things with this, right? You hear things like, we don't owe anything to society, which is insane to me. Because again, tell that to the ambulance that saves you, the court that defends you, the clean water you drink. Again, civilization is shared on responsibility, not on these selfish slogans. We didn't make this and we didn't make ourselves, people. And finally, I love this one. Freedom means keeping my money, right? I what I earn, I should keep. That's my freedom. I should be able to keep it. No, Freedom means your roads don't collapse, your food doesn't poison you, your family doesn't die because you couldn't afford, healthcare. Freedom costs, and we all pay the cost together. So civilization isn't magic, it's maintenance. You either help carry the load or you're going to get crushed underneath it. So I hope this is informative as always. I'll leave you guys with remember to lift more, eat more, rest more, love more, and hate less. Have a great day, guys.